So, coming back from talking about vulnerability, we wanted to kind of expand on this topic and kind of define how, if it's possible, we become better or more efficient at being vulnerable. And it's not that we're making ourselves weaker or somehow more susceptible, but that we're embracing it. We're making room in our heart to understand that this is part of the nature of being human. Hi, and welcome to Tug of Heart. I'm Lori. I'm here with the man who I share a brain with, my twin Leroy. Hi, Leroy.
Hey Lori, how are you?
He's the strong end of us, and I'm happy to be here with him today. Leroy, we talked about vulnerability. So, um, one of the things to kind of shift it into how the way I think of it is how we can be more vulnerable. The thing that kind of rises to the top among my thoughts of what I picture when I picture somebody vulnerable, it's gentle, meek, kind of delicate. And
I
also
see bravery.
that's good. And why not? Why shouldn't you? Because the most delicate of flowers grow in horrendous circumstances. And I think it's a bit of both. And I think that's where the beauty lies. Um, when we think without the heart, let's say just outside the heart, maybe even in the heart, of what is the opposite of vulnerability. And I think one of the reasons we can kind of trip up in getting to this idea of how it's beneficial and why we would want to be it is we have this idea that the opposite of vulnerability is some kind of strength, some type of advantage, um, bigger, stronger, more, having more, empowered. And you and I think, made a decent initial case that that's not always so. So we kind of have to keep that in mind as we move along today, that just because the world says vulnerable is the person who does not have what their neighbor across the street has, doesn't mean this is in line with the heart and a heart-led life. So I guess we'll start there. What do you think about? Tell me actually what you were saying about being strong and vulnerable, or vulnerability as strength.
So I think just recognizing that there's value
Mm-hmm.
is kind of a good start. Recognizing that, wow, that I can build uh, strength, by being vulnerable. So you said, what is the opposite of this? Is a funny word. I'm going to tell you because, and it gets a little bit philosophical, because the opposite of being vulnerable is when you're the most vulnerable.
Okay, you're gonna expand.
So you can be like, yeah, I'm not gonna let anybody get to me. I'm not
Oh,
gonna.
right, right.
I'm gonna keep everybody at bay. I'm gonna be protected. I'm gonna put up walls. It's like the more you work to combat vulnerability, the more vulnerable you become.
That's right. That's right.
And it's only in a willingness to be vulnerable do you overcome vulnerability. So it's almost like you said, we're born upside down. This thought, the thought processes that go with this word are kind of that same birth upside down. It's a little backwards.
You have to be comfortable kind of looking at it from a different angle, a 180.
Yeah, like
I hope I got
isn't that bizarre? To combat it, you must embrace it. But isn't that like a lot of things in life? You
it.
know?
It is bizarre. It's a little less bizarre after you explained it. Uh, After talking to you last time, um, I hadn't thought of it in terms of that, even though I took off as if it was my idea. I hadn't really thought of it till you said it last time. Um, and it comes back to we're strongest, what's strongest in the world, and in humans, and so in the physical and also in the metaphysical, is to be strong is to have integrity, that integration. And what I'm hearing you say is like you keep people at arm's length, and what you're doing is you're disintegrating. You're losing that integrity that you should have with people, with one another, because the first rule, if there were rules of the heart, I can't even say the first, but one of the main things that I have had to learn, in matters of the heart, that does not necessarily come natural to me, is that we're in it together. We're made to get through this together. And that's uncomfortable, because guess what? It means we're vulnerable, because many will reject us along the way. So I love what you're saying about building up things are actually, the way I heard it, it's isolating us from a whole lot of tools that could help us. But it also does something internally to ourself, just to make that shift into like some kind of self-protection mode, right?
Mm, you're taking this probably further than I see it. I think it's like probably very, maybe I don't want to say juvenile, but
No, go on.
kind of a black and white, you know.
That's what we need to
Um,
understand.
I think that I think as I heard the topic and I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about today. And keep in mind, I didn't have any, I didn't have any prep time for this, so I'm shooting literally from the hip.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we get comfortable with it? You know, how do we, probably by trying it, right? Just like, I mean, I don't want to walk away with this kind of just cloudy, complicated. It's like, just try it on a small scale.
Okay, can I take? I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you the number one on my list for how we get comfortable with it. And my list began our last talk, and my number one came from you. So I would like you, if you can, to kind of expand on this. I I see, at least today, and this is a work in progress, what we think about it. So in the moment where I'm at, the number one way I would think to get used to being vulnerable is to have empathy when I see it in others. And you had talked about one of the values being that we have empathy, but when you recognize, sometimes we have to see in others what we don't or are unwilling to recognize in ourselves. So like if your heart is kind of
Mm,
tugged by somebody's vulnerability, even though they don't see it, if you're kind of drawn to it, there's a reason you can make some kind of association that they may be experiencing that. Um, what did you tell us about empathy? I just know that I wrote number one for this show. I took my notes from the last, and it was that empathy. I just think that's
empathy
big.
was in trying to just answer the question, what's the value of vulnerability? The value of vulnerability is that we exercise empathy, we
We
grow
recognize,
empathy, we're
which
breeding empathy.
right, which means we recognize the vulnerabilities of others. And that's that. It's almost like a mirror, because empathy is to enter into what they're experiencing. Now, how would we do that without a point of reference? But it could be from this kind of like um, blind sight point of reference of something. How do we recognize that feeling unless it's been there, even if we've kind of kept it down? Um, so that's the first on my list. I'm not saying it's number one, but I do think there's a lot to be said and expanded on, um, in seeing where other people are vulnerable and recognizing you quite likely could be the same.
Give me a second to here to just kind of scramble with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think when you witness somebody's vulnerability, there's a lot of, and we want to be empathetic about their situation, their reality, the hardship, their willingness. Couple of things. Number one, compliment them on where they're at, because it takes what they're doing in displaying their vulnerability is in high likelihood a greater achievement than it will be solving their current deficit, you know?
Oh my
It's
God.
like it takes more to be vulnerable than the problem that they're actually dealing with. And it's like you can complement that. And I was telling you about like finding reasons to celebrate. Now we're kind of like tying all these things together. So, and then also protect them.
Yes.
Cost nothing.
Yes.
Protect them.
Exact. Yes.
And it's like, what greater display of empathy can we have than to just get involved? And this is not just about like people's feelings. This is I mean, I see everybody struggling to protect children in school and education, and it's like children are vulnerable. And there's a lot of parents doing amazing things to protect children.
Yes. Absolutely. I love this.
And who wins? Well, both parties. The parents for having stood for something, and the children who are the recipients.
That's
You
right.
know, but it's like, but 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 it's like that willingness. I mean, again, it goes back just the being vulnerable. We have to get comfortable with it, because when we're comfortable with that, if we can overcome vulnerability by being okay with being vulnerable, then that's likely a greater accomplishment than the things we're going to face.
Wow. Deep, deep words. The thing I'm left thinking
I
is
wasn't going for deep. I was going for
you did. Why? Why? Okay. I was just thinking as you were saying this about protecting them, because that is appropriate strength, because we had spoke last time of a person being vulnerable is sometimes, whether in truth or not, the implication is that there's another person or another thing in the world that can do damage to them in its strength or their strength if it's a person. And the thing is, it's right and good use of strength. If you have been fortunate enough to learn about being vulnerable and you make yourself vulnerable, and I'm going to try to explain this clear without being like, how I am, awkward. But as you get stronger and you say, I will use this to protect others, you have learned about being vulnerable. So you're not misusing your strength to keep other people vulnerable. Now, the other thing is you are at the same time making yourself vulnerable, because usually to protect implies the sharing of some type of resource, or at least if you're just defending somebody's ideal, you're putting on the line your reputation. If you're even just to stand up for somebody nowadays, right? That takes some vulnerability. People are saying, hey, this person's, they think this or that and really against me. You're like, I like them. I think it's okay what they think. You're putting your personhood on the line for them. So you've made yourself vulnerable. The next thing I was going to say is, based on what we had said about vulnerability and how it strengthens, we would not want to make the mistake of thinking that we protect the vulnerable by erasing vulnerability and its ability to strengthen a person, but rather serve as that teacher or a guide that shows them how this does strengthen and helps them along in life.
I'm starting to see a couple of things. Number one, we got a long way to go, a lot to figure out. number two, the ideas are circling. The ideas and the solutions are circling. We've only been at this for a very, very short time together, as you and I. But as a two-person cohort, we are starting to establish some cyclical solutions. I
Yeah.
remember several episodes ago, I was talking about, we were talking about the will, impressing your will upon somebody. And back then I said, imagine somebody trying to exert their will to stifle your will.
Right.
And then you've got a man. Imagine a man facing an army, a man standing in an open field by himself, unclothed, no weapons, and there is a army coming against him, raging against him. And he sits there and he says through a loudspeaker without anything on, he says, kill me and all you've done is kill a man, but my ideas will remain. And it's like, he just won the battle in that vulnerability. I'm not bringing a weapon. I'm nothing. It's just my idea. You can kill me, but all you did was kill a man. That's it. I
Isn't
mean,
in
there's no pride in that. There is no pride in that.
and
It
no
is
real
just, we
strength.
just killed a man. That's all we did. We killed a man, and his idea, if anything, was empowered through his willingness to be vulnerable,
Yes. And
which gives more credibility than the thousands of men marching against one man. That one man became bigger than the army for having stood up to the army. Impossible odds.
yes.
And yet his name will be remembered in the history books of life. Not the army. The army are just a faceless mass
That's
that,
right.
that simply killed a man. So, wow. I mean,
A
I think
mass. A mass. That's right.
so we probably should, yeah, we definitely in small ways and then medium ways and then is that a way? Is there such thing as medium ways? In small ways and then in great ways, we should become comfortable with vulnerability,
And that's the
not to
thing.
the detriment or compromising of our own safety and or the existence of our family, but we should become far more accustomed when, where, and at what depth to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I think when you say not to the detriment of our safety, when it comes to talking about greater things like the heart, um, not to the detriment of our personhood, and depending on where anybody is, I respect, and none is above the other. That what has to come into play is the right order of what is most valuable to you. And I say that because when you were saying like kill a man and it's a mass versus one, that one human, a real person, becomes more visible than the mass. Just this obscurity is what I'm picturing when you were saying this. And I was thinking, it is taking a whole mass to kill this man. They're doing what an animal can do. And yet, what separates a man from animal? Right? It's something else. Um,
Lavatories.
yeah, true. For most. um, and when we say the detriment and the safety, there are some things that rank with that, I think, and that would be purpose. Because for Christians, it's Jesus Christ. For other people, there have been other characters. One of my favorite movies is Hero, my absolute favorite. And all I pictured as you were saying this was the ending of that movie, which I won't give up in case you haven't seen it. But what is the difference? We're left thinking, because this is an allegory that comes up like a story pointing to something else outside of the obvious, which is Jesus on the cross, but it comes up so many times. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Star Wars, over and over these stories. What is the difference between a person who is suicidal and one who says, I will be vulnerable to the point of martyrdom, right? And one is life altering for many to witness. And I think that's something that comes with time when you reach the ultimate, which is to lay down your life, to be willing to lay down your life for a friend, they say, and this is cross-cultural, cross-religious, and I think I would say even a pretty decent secular idea of the guy that jumps on a grenade for his troop or what.
Daniel
um
Fernandez.
oh, is that a true thing?
That's his name, Daniel Fernandez.
Well, I mean, many have done that, right? But I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, what separates that person, right? And they stand somehow for more. um they have a greater impact a lot of times, like you're saying, versus that mass. And I'm getting a little far with it, but I'm just, all that means is that I got very excited by what you said. Thank you for that. I paid you back with a tangent, and you're up.
Um, I like it. I mean, like I think so now that we've kind of really explored the fringes of benefits and importance, and I said start small, then do great, experiment. How do you think we can start tomorrow?
I'm glad you said that, because I was just, when you said, I said start small, I was just thinking, boy, I went straight to the hero and martyrs. And you know why? Because there's a glory attached to it. It's so easy to just picture this really big um cinematic quality ideas of vulnerability that's actually really being a hero. But I think people are hard pressed to have success, or at least I have been in my walk in life, to have success in being vulnerable in small matters. Those were the hardest. And one of the things I think I don't know if I've ever told you this, probably not. um Hard to believe I've done it when you hear me talk today, but I absolutely have. And it was to make myself vulnerable enough in this one way. And this was my version of laying down my life for another. And that was to not always have to have the last word, but to be quiet sometimes, which, me, we're not raised like that. It's not natural. It's very uncomfortable. And what happened is I would want to be right, or I would want to argue. Um, and I would really want to get in that zinger, the winning point of the debate, whatever it was. And I remember with Steve is when I first, I think, started doing it. It might have even been before that. But what happened is I slowly began to realize this about myself, and how vulnerable I felt to not have that last word. It was unsaid, and I felt so vulnerable to have lost, because I knew there was more. And finally, it came to me one day when I was like, it would kill me. It will kill me to not say the last word. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. There you go. Die unto ourselves. It doesn't always mean you have to stand at the army, in front of the army. You have to let them run you over, shoot you down, burn you at the stake. Sometimes dying to ourselves comes as simple and small as being quiet, even if you think it would kill you to be quiet, then do it. And I'll do that now so you can add on. Little things.
You win.
What do you think we could do
I
as
won. I was waiting for you to say something.
so what do you think we could do for like the little steps? You're a brat. I wish they'd see. I wish we had video on you, because they would know. um
I'm still your brother. Listen, above
yeah.
all else, I'm still your brother.
Oh, you're the best. I wouldn't have you any other way. But do you see what I'm saying about the little things? It's the little things that we don't want to let go of most. We
Right.
can picture the glory. Yeah, I'll go jump in front of a car. Everybody will remember me fabulous. But what about the mundane? That's
Mm-hmm.
tough. That's tough for me, if I'm being honest.
Right. The last word. Yeah. Yep. I'm thinking about it. And to be honest, if I were to be 100% honest, which I'm going to be, um, by not saying the last word, you're winning. You know, that's why I was making an example of staying silent because, so I'm not sure which goes directly in line with everything we've been saying, which is like, you want to combat vulnerability, be vulnerable. You know, if you're in an argument and you have that you're compelled to have the last word, you may think you're winning by having the last word, but by just handing it over, number one, they don't know that they really won or that you just, grew exhausted with their foolishness. And you just like, whatever, it's not worth the time. So I guess that's what I was thinking, embarrassing as it may be.
That's okay.
I think if we want to start small, let's just share things like I've been trying more in the last 6 months. I mean, this is funny, and I'm being vulnerable saying this, but I have been in the last 6 months. I've been married a long time. In the last 6 months, I have been extremely honest with my spouse.
Ah,
And when I say honest, honest that I have fears,
oh wow.
honest that I'm mortal, and that's scary.
Wow. And now with me, you're telling me that look how it's spreading.
It is.
And
And
everybody who listens.
yeah, and am I closer to my wife? It feels like it. You know, I'm not going to tell her, you know, um, I'm not going to give her the kryptonite quite yet, but, but I mean, I definitely tell her, like, man, this last year and, taking this is like been the last hurrah, where I tell her, here I go, I'm making a push and I'm going to exercise because it's important and I want to be healthy and I want to be healthy, you know, sounds funny because I think many of us have tried to be healthy, but I told her, I said, I'm fearful that if I don't adopt these habits as um, this is not a diet, this is not an exercise program, this is a
Vanity.
lifestyle change. I want this to be part of my lifestyle. I want to be the guy that's like, for no particular reason, a Forrest Gump reality, just like I'm just gonna
And
I
then
went
you
out
started running.
I went a walk in,
Oh,
and then I figured I'll walk some more. You know, so I shared that with her and I'm like, I want this to be a
did
part of
you share that with her? Like that?
that's a little too vulnerable. I just feel like walking.
Go back to being strong.
So but I think that was a good way to start. That's it. That's I don't know why I started that. Maybe that's why I'm having this conversation now, but it's a start. It's a start, and off
You
we go. From there, something else, I don't know. I think I like it. I like it. I like that. I think we've got to be careful that it doesn't become braggartly, but I mean, I know that I enjoy writing. I
yes.
I know that for whatever reason, when you ask me to write something, it's easy.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
fast.
I
Shock,
can't gauge the
shockingly fast.
quality. That's for our listeners to do, or you, or my wife. Um, but I enjoy it. And so now I found something that I enjoy, which is not just penning the words, but reading the words and sharing the words. And so that's kind of exciting. So these are like little ways. You know what? What about a new recipe?
I just was looking up recipes last night.
What about a new recipe? you spend some time and you come out with flour on your nose and you're like, look what I did. And
Black pants, and they know your butt itched while you were cooking.
ooh.
Okay, serious vulnerability. Go.
So you're going to put it out there, and there's a good chance that it may not. I mean, it may very well taste like Alpo, or Purina. Um, but but it's a good way to exercise vulnerability.
Side note, since we've unraveled, sooner or later we were going to be us anyways. When we were young, everybody, Leroy and I ate dog food because my mom bought our dog Perky gravy train. It was this thing where you mix some water in it and it was supposed to make gravy in the dog food and the dogs love it. And as my mom ripped that bag and put it in the dog dish, she's like, Perky's having steak tonight. And my brother gave me the idea that we should also have steak
Tonight.
we've eaten dog food together.
We are not we're not recommending you try this at home. This was not a good idea. But I think that there's a lot of little ways. Honesty, recipes, disclosure. Maybe we could go out and buy a meal for somebody that we don't know, because there's vulnerability just in making new friends.
In just the exchange of,
the attempt to
that's right,
introduce yourself. I've never felt vulnerable. Like if there's
like
somebody with their eyes open, I probably want to talk to them. You know,
like
I probably want to talk to them. So I think those are good ways in kind of beginning, kind of a vulnerability 101 how to.
Can I just ask, can we dedicate like the first 10-15 minutes next time to just share what we tried, something new that felt kind of vulnerable, and reach out to people we know and see if anybody else would like to contribute?
Yeah.
I actually like that because even what you said about being honest, because we all think we're honest, but in a new level of disclosure, vulnerable disclosure, honest is different. And that's very interesting to me. I don't even know that I would try that, but I think let's try something that makes us feel vulnerable, and not for the sake of vulnerability or life exercise, but truly, from our heart, we feel we ought to do or try, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's good. I think we're definitely at a point where you and I should try something like that. If any one of our listeners is inclined to try, also do it, and then comment in the
I'm
comment
going
section.
swimming without a swimkini, tankini.
Tankinis, yeah, yeah.
I'm just
I
I'm
wonder where
I'm
my
going without the
tankini is.
skirt, huh?
I don't even know where my tankini is. That was vulnerable.
I'm walking right to the pool, no towel, no tankini.
Yeah, you're going to get folks arrested. But yeah, do you have any ideas that, like, I threw a couple out there.
I'm gonna
I
try.
think you're generally an honest person, but maybe you can give a couple ideas on how we can start in the smallest of ways.
One of them is that I'm going to reach out to you this week and tell you of a place that I have been vulnerable and feeling weak about it, and ask you to help me, and then I'll report it back next week.
I already know about when you went to the gym and the treadmill and all that.
I'm a brute at the gym. No,
Oh, okay. Um,
even
yeah.
even even if my insides don't agree with what's happening, I'll push. I'm just kidding, but I am going to tell you like some vulnerabilities, and my vulnerability is just to express them because I do have some kind of weird value. Um, I like to be I don't like to contribute because I feel like right now in life there's a whole lot of like negativity going on, this day and age, like I say, just with everything happening in the world. So I do try to not contribute because I think like the last thing they need is woe is me in addition to everything else going on. But maybe take a chance and just be like, if a day hits me, today's not so great.
I think one of the risks we run by not disclosing is that somebody listening could be like, wow, I thought I had it bad.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then they hear us.
it's always decent to normalize vulnerability, to normalize the heart, especially. And it's nice when me and you come on here and lose track and stumble and trip up and the messiness that I say, right? Of getting to matters of the heart. And I'm proud to be vulnerable in that way so that it normalizes how just trying looks. Sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's a ridiculous effort, but the intention is there and I believe we will make it. That's the bottom line.
So as we close this, I have to tell you that this is the first time you and I have been on where levity has been so pronounced. It's like today was fun. I mean, like
Well, we ran
when I
out of
say we, I mean you. We're in rare form.
me. Actually, I
Yeah,
thought
I
you
mean,
were.
I think you had a little bit of Twilight, a little a little bit of giggle juice or something.
Well, you know what I think? I think I felt this immense lightening when you were saying about being honest and stuff. Because number one, I just thought you were. I thought if I had to guess, Leroy, any problem Leroy might have, one would have been that he's over honest, and that made me see massively a different perspective of you.
True, but selective.
Right, but see
You
how
know,
it made me feel
honesty,
comfortable though. It
honest,
normalized.
honesty and vulnerability. There's honesty, and I think I'm generally an honest person. But then there's being honest about what I don't really want to be honest about, and just kind of
Yeah,
like
I love
not
that though.
disclosing it.
I didn't know you ever did that. And it made me like it was very humanizing. I think that's why I have been cutting up since. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, I remember him.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Strong Island. Like, share, and above all, comment. Adios.
Please talk to us. Adios.